the EU's timetable for dismantling end-to-end encryption. So the EU is hard at work trying to destroy the internet. In the last few months have seen a steady stream of proposals encouraged by the advocacy of the FBI and Department of Justice to provide lawful access, aka backdoors, which can also be used by hackers should the hackers discover them, to end-to-end encrypted services in the United States. Now lobbying has moved from the U.S. and lobbying, if you guys don't know what that is, it's legal bribery. That's when the companies come in and bribe politicians to get them to do what they want. So it has moved from the U.S., where Congress has been largely paralyzed by the nation's polarization problems, to the EU, where advocates for anti-encryption laws hope to have a smoother ride. Yeah, so if they can't fuck it up in the U.S., they'll fuck it up. I mean, Australia, I think, is already a lost cause. The U.K. is close behind. Then the EU, not looking good. Now, where advocates for anti-encryption laws hope to have a smoother ride. Yeah. A series of leaked documents from the EU's highest institution, so a blueprint for how they intend to make it happen, with the apparent intention of presenting anti-encryption law to the parliament within next year. So if you happen to live in the EU, you need to pay real close attention to this shit, because these idiots are dead set on destroying the internet. Yeah, they want to add backdoors into everything so hackers can have access to all of your information. If this passes, there's always ways around it. Now, you can use a VPN that you made yourself, for example. I mean, most of the paid VPN clients, like, they use OpenVPN anyway. And as long as you're using some open source VPN software, you can make sure there's no backdoors in it. That's the advantage of open source. Now, the problem is, I mean, these services you pay for, you're basically paying for access to the servers that they rent throughout the world, so that you can VPN from another country. So you're gonna have to either buy your own server hosting in that other region, or maybe share with a bunch of other people. However you go about it. But either way, if laws like this get rammed through, you will not be able to trust any paid software or VPN provider anymore, because they will be legally required to shove backdoors into everything. So you're gonna just have to make these yourself. The public signs of this shift in the EU, which until now has been largely supportive towards privacy-protecting technologies like end-to-end encryption, began June with a speech by Ylva Johansson, the EU's Commissioner for Home Affairs, speaking at a webinar on preventing and combating child sex abuse and exploitation. How did I know this was going to be the case? If you want to emotionally manipulate idiots into giving up even more rights and freedoms, there's two easy ways to do it. The first way is Ermagerd ma terrorism, and that's how we got the Patriot Act. The second way is Ermagerd, think of the chillins. And that's the way they're going here. Like, oh, are you support encryption? It's almost as if you're saying you support child sex abuse. They always use children as a fucking weapon to shove these laws through. They know they can't. Any reasonable person is not going to allow this to go through. So their strategy is, all right, fuck reasonable people. Let's get an emotionally driven mob of glorified monkeys to loud enough to force this through for us. Every fucking time. Now, Johansson called for a technical solution to what she described as the problem of encryption, and announced her office had initiated a special group of experts from academia, government, civil society, and business to find ways of detecting and reporting encrypted child sex abuse material. You know what? All this is going to do is it's going to punish regular users of the internet, and the pedophiles they're trying to go after are just going to go further underground and find other ways to operate. It's like I said before, these guys probably already have a network in place where they can run their own VPN that doesn't have to follow these laws. They're probably just going to be running their own little network. And meanwhile, everyone else is stuck with way less security now, while the people who are allegedly the target of this don't have to put up. It's like anti-piracy measures. The only people who suffer are the paying customers. They're the ones that have to deal with intrusive DRM and shit like that and everything, whereas the pirates have a much better version of the product that doesn't have all that shit in it. Same basic thing is going to be happening with encryption. The subsequent report was subsequently leaked. Okay, nice. It includes a laundry list of tortious ways to achieve the impossible, allowing the government access to encrypted data without somehow breaking encryption. If you put in a backdoor, you're already breaking the encryption, because guess what? If a fucking hacker finds that backdoor and then tells all of their hacker buddies, it may as well not be encrypted. At the top of that precarious stack was, as with similar proposals in the US, client-side scanning. We've explained previously why client-side scanning is a backdoor by any other name. Unalterable computer code that runs on your own device, comparing in real time the contents of your messages to an unauditable ban list, and stands directly opposed to the privacy assurances that the term end-to-end encryption is understood to convey. Now this is something they already kind of do. So, like, say if I was suspected of some internet crimes, one of the things the investigators would try to do is put some malware on my computer so they can see the data before and after it was before. If I'm sending it before it's encrypted, or if I'm receiving it then after it gets decrypted. So if they are spying on you from your own device, there's like nothing you can do about it anymore. But this is even worse. They're not talking about like getting a warrant and putting some malware on someone's computer. They're talking about having this shit running on every electronic device. It would be like baked into the operating system at all times, actively scanning this shit. Now, even then, there's ways you can get around it, like how you can disable Windows updates by just blocking all of the IPs at the router level that Windows Updates uses. So whatever this software uses to phone home, you can just block those IPs. You can block its access to its home. Or we're probably going to have to spoof it, honestly, because if you don't spoof it, what's going to happen is they may shut the whole device down if it can't phone home enough times. But this is kind of what they're trying to shove through with this and why it's so dangerous. And now, what's going to happen when hackers find this code on the operating system that does all of this scanning and are able to tap into it? That is going to be a fucking hilarious shit show. This is the same approach used by China to keep track of political conversations on services like WeChat, and has no place in a tool that claims to keep conversations private. I am vindicated once again. For how many years have I been saying that the West always uses China as a boogeyman? Like, oh, look at what those evil Chinese are doing. They're going to destroy the internet. They're going to split the internet in two. And while they fearmonger over China, behind closed doors, they're doing either the exact same thing or something way worse. Every single time. Do not listen to the West's fearmongering of when it comes to China. Because whatever the fuck they're complaining about that China's doing, they are using as a fucking blueprint for what they're about to do as well, if they're not already. It's also drastically invasive step by the government that wishes to mandate it. For the first time outside of authoritarian regimes, Europe will be declaring which internet communication programs are lawful and which are not. I love how the assumption in this sentence is that Europe isn't an authoritarian regime. You sweet summer child. While the proposals are the best that academics facing the squaring a circle could come up with, it's still too aggressive to politically succeed as enforceable regulation. Even if tried, as Johansson assured us, will be a subsequent communication to the fight against child abuse. Now, thank God, it is about time someone finally put their foot down and said, "Now we're not going to let you use Think of the Chillins as a weapon in this one anymore. No, you're gonna have to deal." But while it would require a concerted political push, the EU's higher powers are gearing up for such a battle. In late September, State Watch published a note now being circulated by current EU German presidency called Security Through Encryption and Security Despite Encryption, encouraging the EU's member states to agree to a new EU position on encryption in the final weeks of current year. Yeah, the position is get the fuck out. While conceding that the weakening of encryption by any means, including backdoors, is not a desirable option, the presidency's note also positively quoted an EU counterterrorism coordinator. Okay, this is just fucking funny. Right at the beginning, when they were using "Think of the Chillins," I brought up the two they use. One is terrorism. The other one is "Think of the Chillins." Now they're using the other one. Now they're using terrorism. It's always one of those two every fucking time. So if you guys see someone using "Think of the Chillins" or "Oh my God, terrorism" as arguments, that is a big red flag that you need to dig deeper into it, because there is something really bad about what they're trying to force you to agree to, and that they know damn well you would never agree to otherwise, so they have to emotionally manipulate you. Which calls for what it calls a front door, a legal framework that would allow lawful access to encrypted data for law enforcement without dictating technical solutions to providers and technology companies. So the only way I can see them doing that is like say you had a private public key type encryption. The company would have access to both, and they could give the cops your private key. So once again, you could get around that if you just make your own shit. And the CTC highlighted what would be needed in order to legislate the framework. The EU and its member states should seek to be increasingly present in public debate on encryption, even as they're laughed out of all this shit, in order to inform the public narrative on encryption by sharing the law enforcement and judicial perspective. Yeah, you know what their perspective is? It's like, hey, you know that old saying that the only time the job of law enforcement is easy in a police state? Well, we want our job to be as easy as possible. Can you let us have that? So this avoids a one-sided debate mainly driven by private sector and other non-governmental voices. Translation, we need to shove our fucking talons into everything. This may involve engaging with relevant advocacy groups, including victims associations that can relate to government efforts in the area, aka more appeals to emotion. So, oh yeah, this dude's kid was abducted and sexually assaulted. Yeah, let's use him and his kid's situation as political tools in an appeal to emotion that, oh, if only encryption didn't exist, we could have saved the kid faster. So engagement with the EU will also be key to prepare the ground for possible legislation. Now, these are all big red flags, because at this point, you know what's going to happen. They're going to force it through one way or another. And it's only a matter of time. It's going to be maybe next year. It may be 5 years from now, but it's coming. So start preparing now. A speech by Commissioner Johansson tying defeating secure messaging to protecting Chillins. The paper spelled out technical solutions to attempts to fracture the currently unified or one-sided opposition. So they admit this is really just a political game for them to get more power and control. That's all it is. And presumably in the near future, once the EU has published its new position on encryption, a concerted attempt to lobby, aka bribe, members of the European Parliament for this new legal framework, these all fit the counter-terrorist coordinator's original plans. What did I say? Think of the Chillins or McGurge, stop the terrorists. And they're working together, using both of those excuses to get you to voluntarily give your rights away. We are in the first stages of long anti-encryption march by the upper echelons of the EU, headed directly towards Europeans' digital front doors. It's the same direction as the as Airstrip 1 and Australia and the US have been moving for some time. If Europe wants to keep its status as a jurisdiction that treasures piracy, it will need to fight for it. Well, that's the case with freedom in general. Yeah, the cost of liberty is eternal vigilance. And let's just say the West has proven it doesn't deserve liberty, because they've happily, every single Western country has happily been giving away more and more freedoms, more and more rights. Yeah, sure, let's become an authoritarian regime. Why not? As long as I'm kept safe. That's all that matters.
Oh man, I am so excited to tell you guys right now that finally, after about a year of build-up and shilling, we have launched Blade Devil on Indiegogo, and so far it is doing so well thanks to awesome people like you. If you haven't backed it yet, then please check the links in the description and check out Blade Devil on Indiegogo. You will not be disappointed. Looking forward to seeing you there.